I've said good morning here, but it's not the morning, it's afternoon. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second Head and Neck Cancer Parliamentary event. My name is Nadia Rosen and I'm the CEO of Head and Neck Cancer Australia. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. As I'm sure many of you know, the word Canberra comes from the Ngunnawal language and means meeting place, and I'm so pleased that you could all be here to meet with us today. I'm particularly grateful to Senator Deborah O'Neill, co-chair of the Parliamentary Friends of Cancer Care and Cure group, for hosting today's lunch, and all of the parliamentarians who have joined us. I'd also like to extend a very warm welcome to our special guests, Tracy Sims, who's come down from Brisbane, and Sophie Fleming, an anaplastologist from Northern New South Wales, who she describes herself as someone who makes spare parts for people. I'd also like to thank representatives from the Department of Health and Aged Care and Dr. Felix Sim, who's representing the Australian Head and Neck Cancer Society, and Associate Professor Bruce Ashford, who's a founding director of our charity. To the nurses and allied health professionals from the Head and Neck Cancer Unit at Canberra Hospital, who have taken time out of their busy schedules to be here today, thank you. I'd also like to thank our board directors, Matthew McGarry and Carolyn Smith. Matthew, you'll hear from Matthew shortly. And finally, I'd like to welcome and thank all the patients and carers who have joined us today. You may be here as individuals, but please know that you are representing a community of people across Australia, and your presence is helping to make a difference to others who are living with head and neck cancer and those people who will follow. Today is about shining a light on a critical gap in recovery for Australians living with head and neck cancer, and how, with the federal government's support, we can help those people who have literally had part of their face or mouth removed and are struggling with the profound and disfiguring side effects of treatment to literally feel whole again. For those of you who joined our first parliamentary event, you may remember seeing some graphic images of people after head and neck cancer treatment. And today will be no different, because this is the reality of head and neck cancer for many of our patients. So with that warning, I'd like to set the scene by playing a short video. As the video showed, head and neck cancer often has devastating and lifelong effects impacting a person's quality of life and their ability to function as a normal part of society. Head and neck cancer is not a single cancer. It is a complex and diverse group of cancers that can affect a person's throat, their mouth, salivary glands and skin, just to name a few. More than 5,400 people will be newly diagnosed in Australia this year, and while survival rates are over 70%, given the location of the cancer in critical areas of the face and head, many people are faced with brutal treatment and lifelong side effects. The reality is, though, that for many people who have undergone major head and neck cancer treatment and are cured, they will never access the survivorship care they need. Access to a nose, an eye or an ear so they can feel confident leaving the house, or dentures so they can chew their food, let alone smile, which has a significant impact on their quality of life. As Pete Gibson, who had his ear removed after being diagnosed with an aggressive skin cancer, said, "When I finally found the courage to look at myself in the mirror, I thought, what have I done? How can I ever look semi-normal again? Do I have to buy a balaclava so I can walk around in public? Or Amanda Kelleher, who was treated for oral cancer. While dental implants were covered by Medicare during surgery, I now need to pay for the actual teeth, which are considered elective, even though I need them to eat, and the only reason I had them removed was because of cancer. And finally, Anne, who had 9 teeth removed after being diagnosed with mouth cancer and needed to have surgery to replace 2/3 of her tongue, followed by radiation therapy. I've spent the last 10 years and thousands of dollars on oral care, but I still face losing the rest of my teeth due to the long-term impacts of radiation therapy. Head and Neck Cancer Australia is the only national charity, dedicated to supporting people with head and neck cancer. We were founded in 2014 by a small group of head and neck cancer clinicians who saw the devastating impact these cancers have on their patients and who wanted to do more than just stop at curing them. Today, we are raising our voices in Parliament to ensure all Australians who have had part of their face or mouth removed can access critical facial prosthetics and oral rehabilitation services so that they can recover and feel whole again. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Matthew McGarry. Matt is a head and neck cancer surgeon at the Peter MacCallum Centre in Melbourne. Matt believes that ongoing and equitable support is essential for his patients, and that's why he advocates and has joined the Head and Neck Cancer Australia Board. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for the introduction, Nadia. Hi, everyone. Last time I was here at Parliament House was my high school excursion, so it's been a little while. Looks a bit more modern than that now. As Nadia said, I'm Matt. I'm an ear, nose and throat and head and neck surgeon. I'm in charge of the head and neck cancer unit at Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre in Melbourne. I operate there. I operate at Box Hill Hospital and also at Epworth Private Hospital in Melbourne. And I've recently joined the board at Head and Neck Cancer Australia, which I'm thrilled about, and I'm looking forward to helping the charity grow over the next few years. Now, as a surgeon, what I do to people is pretty awful. Occasionally I get a colleague of mine who's a breast surgeon come in to my theatre and he watches me what I do and he says, geez, to be a head and neck surgeon, you must have to hate cancer and you must have to hate people. Now, I don't hate people, I love my patients, but he says it because what I do to people can be horrific. I'm cutting out half of their face to cure their cancer, but at the same time I'm cutting away at part of their identity. It can be pretty horrific. But these patients that I treat are some of the most courageous and inspirational people that I've ever met. I think we've got friends of Canberra Hospital here, some patients around the room. Have a chat with them. They have amazing stories to tell you. But I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about some of my patients today. So just imagine for a moment not wanting to leave home because you had surgery for a cancer on your nose and that had to be removed. And you're too embarrassed about the hole in the middle of your face to go out and face public, and you can't afford a prosthetic. Imagine not wanting to join your family Christmas because you had cancer in your cheek and that had to be removed, including part of your mouth, and you can't eat anymore. People are looking at you. Imagine not wanting to go to your kids' or your grandkids' school Christmas concert because you had part of your jaw and your teeth removed and you can't smile anymore. These are the stories of some of my head and neck cancer patients. So head and neck cancers are a group of sinister diseases. The signs and symptoms of head and neck cancer can mimic a lot of benign conditions. Maybe a small ulcer on the tongue, a lump in the neck, sore throat, a bit of an earache. Sometimes there's a lack of awareness in primary healthcare providers, so patients are often diagnosed late. Survival is now up at around 70%, so we do a pretty good job. But the treatments are widely acknowledged as some of the toughest treatments for cancer, and they can take away basic functions such as breathing, talking, chewing, swallowing, communicating. They can affect someone's hearing their eyesight, sense of taste and smell, let alone horrendous facial disfigurement. In my patients, the physical, functional and psychological effects of their cancer and the treatments will stay with them for their whole lives. The journey of head and neck cancer patients can be really lonely and difficult, can lead to anxiety, depression, a loss of employment and social isolation. To recover, head and neck cancer patients who have lost parts of their face or their mouth, they need access to facial prosthetics and oral rehabilitation to make them look and feel whole again. So today, we're asking for equitable access to essential facial prosthetics for all Australians who have had part of their face removed as a result of cancer. With an investment of just over $31 million, we can establish a head and neck cancer maxillofacial prosthetics benefit scheme. And that's quite a mouthful, so I'll say it again. A head and neck cancer maxillofacial prosthetics benefit scheme. Prostheses are artificial appliances designed to restore a missing part of the body that can't be repaired surgically. So external facial prosthetics are required to simulate important facial features such as a nose or an eye or an ear. And you've seen a lot of these on the video already today, and you can see what a dramatic difference it can make in how someone looks. We can't just cover up someone's face with clothing. Faces are exposed to the world, and they're a huge part of someone's identity. So these types of prostheses are critical for returning someone as a functional member of society. We can restore a normal appearance, social confidence, and even an ability to return to work that results after a major facial deformity. So as Nadia pointed out, medical costs of the surgery are covered by Medicare. Even implants that might go into a jaw that's been reconstructed, put in at the time of surgery, they're covered by Medicare. But the cost of facial prosthetics, there is no funding scheme in Australia at a state or territory or an Australian government level. And unbelievably, health funds do not consider these functional. They consider them purely cosmetic. The average cost of a silicone facial prosthetic is $6,000 and about $4,000 to replace every few years when they wear out. Our ask today is pretty simple. We're asking for all people who need a facial prosthetic to have access to funded facial prosthetics. Just like the people who have had breast cancer surgery, who have access to funded breast prosthetics. We're also asking today for $2.5 million to help address some of the key challenges faced by our patients who need support for oral rehabilitation. So these are people like Mandy, who you can read about in our brochure. So Mandy was in her 40s and she was diagnosed with a mouth cancer. She had part of her jaw, including her teeth, removed. That was covered by Medicare. She had the jaw reconstructed with implants. That was covered by Medicare. But Mandy now needs to go and pay for the teeth that go on top of those implants. That'll help her to chew, swallow, talk, and smile. Other people with head and neck cancer may have been cured with radiation therapy, and they can be left with significant lifelong impacts on their oral health. Problems such as xerostomia, which is a dry mouth. I've got that a bit now because I'm a bit nervous, but mine will go away after I finish talking. Dry mouth can increase the risk of dental decay. You can get problems like osteoradionecrosis, which is death of the bone in a jaw. And that can be harder and even more expensive to treat than the cancer itself. Most patients who undergo major head and neck treatment never access the survivorship that they need due to financial, workforce knowledge, access barriers. And it results in a really poor quality of life for people who've been treated and cured of their cancer, but are living with the lifelong effects of that treatment. The small amount of funding that we're asking for today would enable Head and Neck Cancer Australia to continue to work in collaboration with head and neck cancer clinicians across Australia to develop a sustainable option for addressing these issues. All Australian cancer survivors need support. Achieving equity in cancer outcomes in priority population groups and between tumour types is a key objective of the Australian Cancer Plan. So that's why I'm calling on the government today to meet the needs of a small group of Australians living with head and neck cancer who are cured, but who we would argue are some of the most disenfranchised group of cancer patients in Australia. Every Australian with cancer should have the same opportunities for recovery and survivorship support as other cancer patients. So I can help cure my patients of cancer, but I need the government's help to put my patients together, get all the pieces of their puzzle, and make them feel whole again. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Now, we were going to have a Q&A, but we're actually going to ask Senator Deborah O'Neill to come up and say a few words just in case she has to duck out to vote in Parliament. So I'd like to welcome Senator Deborah O'Neill. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Nadia, for the invitation to make some remarks here today. I want to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Ngunnawal people and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I particularly want to encourage you to see here amongst you two of my great colleagues in the Senate. Do you want to stand up? The Tasmanian team here. We've got Senator Billick and Senator Terrell. So they're and up the back, we've got my good friend, Mr. Warren Ench from the House as well, who's here. Thank you. And I can't even see who that is. You've got it's Louise. You've got the light behind you. Senator Pratt from Western Australia. And to have, 4 people here in the middle of a busy sitting day is no small achievement. And I think lots of other people are raising their awareness because you are here and you're telling the story of a particular form of cancer that is increasing exponentially. And as a woman, just mindful of the impact of the Gardasil injections only hitting a part of the population, and this growth in mouth cancers and throat cancers and esophageal cancer that's happening for young women is a social phenomenon that we have just not really properly understood yet. And I can only see the need for care increasing. So I want to thank you, Nadia, for your leadership and the great team that you have, including Leslie and everybody who brought today together. I also want to acknowledge my team. I see Tanil up the back there and Shane from my office, who do a lot to pull this whole sort of an event together. And as you were speaking, now I just want to make sure is it professor, but it should be. If it's not, it's doctor. And as a former teacher, I think about, what you would have been like as a little boy in Year 8, because in about an hour, one of the little boys that I used to teach in Year 8 at St Edward's College in East Gosford on the Central Coast is about to deliver my second grandchild. So I know what somebody around your age looked like when they were in Year 8, and I think, what was it inside you that inspired you to go on to undertake the journey of becoming a medical practitioner, then to draw yourself through your experiences and what you've observed and the people who interacted with you to the moment where you're doing this remarkable work. And I would very much say motivated by love and generosity and not by hate in any way, to care, to undertake the journey of care. And then on top of that, to undertake this journey of advocacy. It's a very, very significant thing. And I can't say that I've heard somebody more clearly or articulately put the case than I have in hearing you speak today. And I know that my colleagues will be very, very keen to further raise awareness around this matter. Your face is an important part of your identity and your work life, your social life, your family life. And although I have a very small story to tell, And I'd say to people, well, I had most of my nose removed last year, because I did, and it was one of those curetting for a Mohs surgery, and it just kept going and going, and the doctor said, oh, there's no way we're going to be able to stitch this up, it's going to have to be a full thickness skin graft. I just, get it out, we'll deal with that afterwards. But I actually went and saw my mum the day before I went to have the surgery. I didn't tell her, because we've had a lot of cancer journeys in our family and it freaks her out. So I just said, you need to say goodbye to my nose, Mum, because it's going. It won't be the same. You need to get ready for this. I probably should have given my husband a bit more TLC as well. I can't expect him to be tougher than my mum. And I had a fantastic outcome. It's all been removed and it's all been cleaned up. But just to give you an idea of how, even such a relatively minor surgery, big impact. God, what will it be like afterwards? But I was here at Estimates one night, and a Green Senator, David Shoebridge, he's a pretty ferocious warrior in this place. He was sitting not too far away from me, but after the surgery, I had a very, very dark line across the bottom of my nose. And he really kindly came over to me and said, Deb, I think you might have got a bit of an ink stain on the and I said to him, oh no, David, it's because I've got most of my nose chopped off. You got to make, and he was like horrified that he'd actually sort of traversed this with me. And I said, no, I really sincerely thank you for doing that, because well, it shows that you care, for starters, but it just does show that people are interacting with us visually all of the time. And I had great support from my colleagues when I returned, and it was like, oh wow, Dad, that's a bit serious, but it's looking okay, and it's getting better and better, and people don't comment on it now, even though they perhaps see it. It becomes a part of your normal. But if I hadn't been able to get that surgery, if there hadn't been somebody in Year 8 like you who'd come through that journey, who developed that skill and that level of care, it would be a very different 2024 for me. And if the time comes again for more of this, for me or my family or for you or your family, we need to make it as easy and as fast as possible for people to get the surgery they need and to get the recovery they need to be able to continue to live their life in the fullest possible way as citizens, to contribute to the economy, to contribute to the social good of the country, to contribute the fullness of their potential in the way that clearly so many of you in this room are doing. So can I lend my voice to support you in your endeavour? I can absolutely commit to writing to the Minister in the most positive and supportive terms for the proposal you put forward, knowing we don't know what the outcome will be. And the fact is, if a whole lot of multinational companies continue to avoid paying tax in Australia and in other countries around the world, really important things like this for our citizenry will never be achieved. So if you're talking to any multinationals or any big corporations who think it's real smart to do the tax shuffle and not pay their fair share of tax, have a good go. And let them know what it means, right? Because tax avoidance, tax evasion, dodgy taxation from multinational companies costs Australians. It is not a victimless paper crime. It is a real crime that prevents us from helping people live the fullest life that they're capable of living. So once again, thank you very much for my colleagues for being here, and I hope that you enjoy your visit to Parliament. Thank you for your passionate advocacy and your service of the Australian people through your civic action.
Thank you, Senator, and hopefully that bell doesn't ring and you can have an opportunity to listen to our guests. So I'd like to welcome Sophie Fleming and Tracy Sims to come and join me.
Are we on?
Yes, well done. And I think that's the key thing, though, Deborah, Senator, is that. But in Australia, I think most people with head and neck cancer will say that they have had amazing clinical care. Our hospitals, people have clinicians like Felix, like Bruce, like Matt, like all of the clinicians from Canberra Hospital. And when they're in hospital and they're having their treatment, they have amazing gold class care or gold standard care. But particularly what's unique about head and neck cancer is the care that these patients get once they're cured, but they're living with the side effects of treatment. And you were fortunate to just have a small part of your nose removed, but for those people who have to unfortunately have their whole nose removed, that's this group of people who are at the moment not always getting what they need. So I'd like to welcome Sophie Fleming and Tracy Sims up to the stage, and I'd really like to thank them for being here, because it takes a lot of courage, I think, to come to Canberra and be at the big Parliament House and to be sitting in front of you, and particularly for patients to be reliving, to have someone like me asking them questions and be reliving their cancer experience. So I'd really like to thank both of you for being here today, because we certainly, as a charity and an advocacy group, our messages wouldn't be the same if we didn't have people like Sophie and Tracy joining us. So thank you. So I'd like to start with, thank you. So with Sophie, as I mentioned when I started, Sophie describes herself as someone who makes spare parts for people. So Sophie, you're an anaplastologist. Can you explain to everyone what that actually means?
Sure, and I'd just like to say a huge thanks for bringing us here today, because it is something that has been on my radar since I began doing this, and it's wonderful to have this advocacy.
Can I just stop you for a second? Can everyone hear Sophie? No.
Sorry, I have a
there we go.
voice.
Yeah, maybe just closer. If I was Julie McCrossan, I'd have that right into your mouth, but I'm not. So, but yeah.
Okay, I'll try and speak up.
Awesome.
So thank you. So anaplastology is a field of prosthetics that sits within maxillofacial prosthetic reconstruction. So we are allied to both the dental profession and also prosthetics and orthotics. The delineation is that we create prosthetics for the external body, so prosthetics that are outside the mouth, that are non-weight bearing, and that's typically eyes, ears, noses, and things like that.
And how did you get into facial prosthetics?
So I come from an arts background primarily. I used to work in the film industry, and then I went and studied maxillofacial prosthetics and did clinical science. So it's a real mix of art and science, and it's a beautiful job in that regard, because we get to use artistic skills in a clinical setting to rehabilitate people.
And can you explain what the process is of actually creating a facial prosthetic?
Yeah, sure. So it currently takes between 3 or 4 visits to create a facial prosthesis for somebody, and ideally we'd be doing this within a multidisciplinary team. So we'd be doing this within a setting that has head and neck surgeons and the rehabilitation side of things as well. We see people to take a physical impression of their face or a 3D scan nowadays. The second visit would be to try on a prototype. So we would be using 3D printing to create a prototype and translating that to wax, and then we will fit that to the person. And the patient's very involved in the process of having a prosthesis made, because it's a custom-made prosthesis. So these are not off-the-shelf items. It is a missing piece of the puzzle. And then the third or the fourth visit would involve the final fitting, and where we do the colouring. We do kind of 2 colouring processes within the creation of the prosthesis, and then training a person on how to wear that prosthesis and look after it, because unlike a film prosthesis, which is worn and applied to a person and then removed and thrown in the bin at the every day, these prosthetics are worn for years. And it's really important that the person wearing them knows how to apply and remove and care for that prosthesis in a way that's healthy for them as well.
And so when do you normally get involved? Is it after someone's had their surgery, or?
So someone like me would be involved ideally before the surgery, particularly if we need to be involved in, say, if there's an implant retained prosthesis, if it's held on with magnets or another structure that's implanted into the bone. We might be involved in the process of planning for that, so that those implants are placed in a way that works for that prosthesis. But because a lot of these people that require the prostheses are spread across Australia and are coming from all kinds of different hospitals and departments, I often don't see them until after the fact. So sometimes it'll be before and sometimes after.
Yep. So how would you, because you've obviously, cared for a lot of people, what impact does it have on the people that you've met?
It's enormous. It's often the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that it's amazing because the surgeons and the cancer care team have saved somebody's life, and often I feel lucky because my job is to kind of put the icing on the cake, so to speak. But it's a real honour to be involved with somebody at that part of their journey, and to be able to use those kind of skills and training to create somebody's rehabilitation, so back to kind of normal life. And the stories that I hear of people that have been in recluse for up to a year. I just spoke to a woman last week that I did a review consult for, and she said that she'd been reclusive for a year until she'd received her prosthesis, and it had allowed her to get back and be involved with her family. It had allowed her to go back to work. It had really led that path for her. So, and I hear these stories over and over again, and it's heartbreaking because of the lack of funding. It means that there are many people that don't know that a clinician is available because there's so few of us, but also if they don't have the funds for it, then it can be really hard for them to access that as well.
So have you been in a situation where you've had a patient come who finds out that it's an option, but they don't have the funds to be able to follow through with having a prosthetic made?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really heartbreaking situation to be in, particularly when you want to keep a practice going so that you can continue to create prosthetics for people. So yeah, that's definitely something that we've come across before. Yeah.
What's unique about facial prosthetics? How do they cross that cosmetic and functional divide?
Yeah, I think we have a real conversation around funding for prosthetics within this country where the word cosmesis is used a lot, and it prevents, and particularly within limb prosthetics, and I think that's where this comes from, there's a whole conversation around function. And so function for people at this point when we're talking about prosthetics seems to be whether it will restore your ability to walk or run, but facial prosthetics are a really unique piece of assistive technology, and there's some very wonderful research that's been done around this, and that's kind of shown that a well-made prosthesis will negate that function cosmesis divide. So it allows the person wearing that prosthesis to regain control of their social interactions. So somebody without, with a part of their face missing has kind of three options, and that is to wear no prosthesis at all, to cover it with a bandage or a Band-Aid, or to wear a realistic prosthesis. And each of those choices trigger a different social response. And having a realistic facial prosthesis means that every interaction is not fronted with that facial difference. So, and that's the control that it provides, and therefore that's the function of it as well, let alone covering, open facial cavities, capturing sound, holding glasses on. Yeah, there's definite function in there. So I think we need to remove this idea that it's cosmetic, because it's certainly not.
So what's your ultimate goal when you're making a facial prosthetic?
So my ultimate goal is to follow the needs of the user. So it may be we will create a prosthesis based on their lifestyle and what they're doing, but really, if I do my job well, it's to make a prosthesis that's invisible. And that's the main goal, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what would you say is your job? I remember listening to an interview and the journalist was saying, is it about convincing the world or the person that they're whole again, or is it about giving the person a choice as to how they want to interact with the world?
Yeah, and I think that word choice is really, really important. So it may be, when I provide a prosthesis, I always say, it's up to you how you use it. And some people will not wake up without it. They'll put it on as soon as you wake up in the morning. Others will only use it when they go out in social situations. Others find that they're comfortable just as they are without a prosthesis. So I think the key word here is choice, and allowing people to regain control of that choice, whereas we just don't have that right now.
So to the MPs who've joined us today, what would you like to say to them about funding for facial prosthetics?
I would like to say, if this was you, what would you like to have your choice to be, or a family member? I can't fathom what it would be like to have my nose missing, and just to put yourself in those shoes and, help us create a country that has a dedicated funding stream and scheme for these patients is imperative.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything else?
No, just a huge thank you for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you, Sophie.
And a big thank you to Tracy.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. Tracy, tell us your story. When were you diagnosed? And I know, and this is why, just relive that.
I was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma. I simply went into the ophthalmologist one day, had a blocked tear duct, we said, so I said, okay, I'm fit and healthy, let's go in to day surgery, and he would unblock it for me, and that would be the end of my problems. I was continually in meetings, my eye was watering, and I looked like I was crying. People would go, what's the matter, what are you crying about? So anyway, we did that. While I was doing the operation, he found a tumour, which he thought that he got all of it, and that was fine for probably 18 months. After that, it had reoccurred, and I was handed over to the MDT team at the Royal Women's Hospital in Brisbane, and they met with me. I was very paranoid. I thought cancer this time had gone right through my body, and I was seeing the rest of my life come past my eyes very quickly. They let me know that they would have to remove my eye to achieve the margins when they operated this time, and odd feeling that most people would say, but I felt this huge sense of relief that all I was going to lose was my eye. So I ventured forth, went through with the operation. Shortly after the operation was successful, I also had a skin graft, or a free flap as it's known, the skin taken from my leg. All successful for about 18 months. But after that operation, they come back and said that we've got most of it, 95%. However, it's now showing up on pathology. It's in your roof of your mouth and it's in your gum. So I thought, as I said to Matt before, I really had no choice but to go back into another operation once I'd healed, and have those parts of my head removed as well. My biggest thought as a mum of grown children, that they were about to be married, I would have grandchildren. I had to do whatever I could to keep living and be part of their lives. So my biggest concern though was, once they take the roof of my mouth and they take part of my gum, most of my gum on the left-hand side, how do you live? How do you manage your life after that? So fortunately, I was then treated with radiation and chemotherapy, and within a few weeks the cancer had been stopped. So I was wrapped, but very sick from those treatments. After that, about 18 months, the free flap, or the skin graft that covered the hole or the cavity where my eye was taken, started to melt away, deteriorate, and my face was much like the photos that you've seen on the screen, and I was patient, but I wanted to know what was going to happen, because I still love life. I still like to swim. I like to do a whole lot of different things, but I had a hole in my face. I still needed to work. I work in the construction industry, male-dominated industry. I had to face people every day, and I had to feel confident about myself, but I still had this hole. So I started from wearing little Band-Aids to bigger Band-Aids to 2 Band-Aids to cover this void in my face. I went back to the plastic surgeon, and he was a bit wary about undertaking more treatment, so he suggested that I call Sophie. I met Sophie, and she took a look at what I had. I did have a cavity that she could work with, and she continued then over the 4 or 5 visits to construct or make my prosthetic, which I have forgotten to sort of say that at the end of it, when she did fit it, I did cry through the one eye that I had left, because it was amazing. It was mind-blowing to see me again with an eye and a cheek and not 2 massive Band-Aids over my face, which, you know, wearing 2 Band-Aids a day, it's not a cheap exercise either, because they're particular ocular ones, you know, that have to cover that void. So Sophie has provided me with the solution to let me go out there to deal with the people that I need to deal with confidence. But I guess I was a little bit fortunate that I had a little bit of savings behind me. I feel for those people that don't have that and have to rely or do not leave their house, basically, just like Sophie said, do not want to front their family, do not want to go to Christmas lunch because of how they look. I'm not a vain person, so to speak, and worry about how I look, but I do meet people and I just think, you know, they've locked themselves in their house now because they don't have any access to what I had access to. So, yeah.
And also it's covering up, you know, part of your face. So from a functional, or just if you don't have a facial prosthetic, your open face is
I've got Band-Aids, yeah.
to the elements.
And, yeah.
So it also offers protection to
exactly
the inside of your head.
It's hygiene. It's it's could so easily get bacteria there and could go to the brain, etc. So it's something that I had to keep well sealed, well covered, and that's why I was keen to move forward with another operation. But Sophie has provided me with that reassurance that it is sealed. As my surgeon said, you're plugged up now for a while. Which, yeah, we have that bit of banter between us, but initially he said when he was taking my eye that you girls are lucky you can wear big sunglasses. I said, oh, right, that's okay if you only go out during the day. But, yeah, here I am. Sophie's work is amazing and what she can do for people. I can't recommend her highly enough. But people do need to be able to have access to funding because otherwise your life has really come to an end if you can't go outside your door and enjoy your family and whatever you have to do.
I do remember you telling me about a woman that you'd met just recently in Brisbane who had similar surgery and hasn't got a facial prosthetic. So what's her situation?
I had a job to look at up on Coolum, and the property manager said to me, go and see Mrs. Such and Such over there. She's got the same as you. And I went, oh, okay, what's she got? And she also had her eye removed. She wouldn't leave her apartment. I didn't want to go and see her really because I felt a bit sort of bad because I was out and about, she wasn't. But I ended up spending a couple of hours with her and she said to me, it's just all too hard. She couldn't afford the trips. The family drive her to Brisbane to the appointments, but this is the way she intended to stay, with a bit of gauze and tape over her eye, which can't have been healthy, I'm sure. But there are people out there like that they don't have access, and we need to give them access because along with that comes, you know, your mental health as well, anxiety, depression, all the other things that happen as a result of not wanting to leave your home.
I think it's not uncommon that we hear from patients who actually didn't mind COVID because they could wear a face mask and all of a sudden they felt like they weren't being, you know, looked at because everyone else had a face mask as well. So you've talked about, I think your private health fund said that they wouldn't cover the cost of it because it was considered cosmetic. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. When initially after the operation, I looked into a glass eye, and that's the first time I'd met Sophie and talked to her about that. But because I didn't have a cavity, she couldn't help me. So I did make inquiries with the health cover then, and yes, anything to do with cancer will all be covered. Any glass eyes, whatever you need, you'll all be covered. So when the time come to meet with Sophie again and I inquired about the prosthetic, it was, oh no, that's a cosmetic appliance. No, we're not covering that. The denture, which I needed to get so that I could chew, also was just covered under my general. It wasn't anything, any special attention or rebate given to that because of the cancer. So every reassurance that I got originally went out the door because everything was deemed to be cosmetic.
And so I guess part of the reason we're here today is, you're fortunate to have private health insurance, although they haven't covered everything that you've needed. But what difference has the denture made? Because you had part of your gum removed and the teeth. So what has that denture done for you?
Well, it's allowed me to smile and know that there's teeth there. It's allowed me to chew and swallow food. Along with the radiation and chemotherapy, I've lost my hearing, my taste, my smell. There's a whole lot that goes with it. But bottom line is I'm alive and I hope to see grandchildren in the near future. But I don't think people understand that, and I think there should be some sort of cover, and even cover for that sort of rehabilitation, the hearing aids, for example. So,
Did you feel you understood what not the consequences, but what was going to happen after the surgery and what you would need to navigate to get yourself,
Not really. I was more grateful to be alive. That was paramount at that time because, as I said, when I went to that MDT meeting, the outcome of that, I had honestly thought they were coming to tell me I had 6 months to live.
Yeah.
So anything after that was a blessing,
Yeah.
And to lose an eye, I just thought, okay, I'm living,
As Matt said, head and neck cancer patients are pretty amazing because, you're told that you have to have part of your mouth or face removed and everyone's grateful that they're still alive.
Yeah.
But it is, how do we support these patients to have the best quality of life with what, those side effects look like for them after treatment. This is a pretty heavy conversation, but I do also remember listening to Tracy in an interview. Obviously, she has a very special relationship with Sophie, who made a piece of her face. But would you like to tell everyone the story? Because, clearly you can't just go to the chemist and pick up another facial prosthetic if you happen to lose it. So, Tracy, what happened to your facial prosthetic just before Christmas?
So Sophie completed my facial prosthetic back in September last year. Wrapped, over the moon, couldn't get enough of it. And my daughter works in the clinics at the hospital in Brisbane in admin, stressed to the eyeballs, crying from the stress and all that. And I said to her, I've got a meeting down at Broadbeach down the Gold Coast, jump in the car, togs and towel, I'll get rid of that meeting, 15 minutes, we're going in for a swim. Okay, no worries. So we did that. We're frolicking around in the gentle surf down there, and I've got my prosthetic in, well glued, holding my hand as I go through the waves, blah, blah, blah. Went in a few times. Last swim, let's go. Random wave, bang. Knocked me for 6. And I stood up, she's 28, and I stood up and I just laughed. And I just said, my prosthetic, I've lost it. And she just stood up and bawled her eyes out. And she bawled and bawled and bawled like a kid. And she was so rapt that her mum had an eye and a cheek for Christmas that was coming up. She was now devastated because her mother had lost that prosthetic. We didn't know if it's gone off with the seagulls or where it's gone. But anyway, it was lost, and all she could, Friday afternoon, ring Sophie, ring Sophie, ring Sophie. I said, no, Sophie's got a weekend, leave her alone. But sure enough, within a couple of weeks, Sophie, I'm sure, had spent her Sunday making another prosthetic for me. So when I went to the next appointment that was scheduled, she had it. I had Christmas lunch with my family, with an eyebrow, with eyelashes, with an eye. My face was covered again. It's just the person that she is and what she can offer. It's just amazing.
Yeah, go Sophie. Did you want to say something? Or?
Microphone's sweaty.
I just wanted to say it's just a testament to the resilience of you. Tracy's an utter powerhouse, incredible. But I just wanted to say about that survivorship. From what I see, and I know there's kind of research around this too, but once you get over that adrenaline of surviving cancer, that's when the ramifications of the impact of the treatment starts to hit. So it's not even, it's often not until 6 to 12 months later that the full impact of the loss starts to impact people. So yeah, that ongoing follow-up care is really that missing piece of the puzzle that we have now. That's so important that we're here today.
Yeah. So Tracy, what would you say to the MPs who are here today about both facial prosthetics, but also you need a denture, about the funding that should be available to support patients?
I'd really like you to support it. I feel like the lucky one. I really do. I'm enjoying my life as I hope to, and I hope to for many years yet. But there are people out there that are suffering and they don't have that life that I have. So, and they probably can't work either, and the mental health that goes with that. I just think it's so important that the government... I've had a couple of girlfriends come to me recently where they've had breast cancer and they said they just cannot understand how this is not provided for people when they have got breast implants without question at no cost. So I probably didn't think about it too much, but when someone comes to you and says that, it does bring it home to you that, yeah, there are a lot of people suffering out there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We could keep talking about this for ages,
Yeah.
but I'd like you to give Tracy and Sophie a round of applause. Thank you both very much. And please stay. You can join me for our closing comments. Before my closing comments, I'd just like to reflect on the fact that Head and Neck Cancer Australia is... They're the magic bells. Great. You're okay. Awesome. That Head and Neck Cancer Australia is having to support Australians living with head and neck cancer. In 2022, we received our first federal government grant to develop a vital resource to support people who are newly diagnosed with the type of cancer that many have never even heard of before. We also launched an accredited education module, accredited by the Royal Australian College of GPs and endorsed by the Australian Dental Association, for GPs and dentists to help raise awareness of the changing nature of head and neck cancer, to encourage early detection and to ensure that patients who are newly diagnosed get optimal referral to a head and neck cancer multidisciplinary team to give them the best possible outcomes, as well as educating GPs and dentists about how they can better support their patients. The engagement of both of these resources has been excellent. Since launching the education module, we've had 2,500 GPs and dentists enrolled to complete that module. Earlier this year, we were very pleased to receive funds from the Australian Government as part of the Australian Cancer Nursing and Navigation Program to launch Australia's first specialist head and neck cancer helpline in early 2025. The helpline will initially be staffed by nurses, including people like the lovely Megan, who's sitting down here, a head and neck cancer nurse who worked for many years at Canberra Hospital, as well as a counsellor, and it will focus on providing specialist support to patients and loved ones, particularly in the early days of a diagnosis before they are connected with people like Matt at the hospital. And once they're discharged from hospital and they're navigating what their new normal looks like after cancer treatment. And we're very grateful to the Australian Government for listening to our community and acknowledging the unmet needs of people affected by head and neck cancer. But while it's a great start, there is more that needs to be done to support this very unique group of patients. As you've heard today, head and neck cancer is a sinister disease that can affect a person's mouth and face. It's the very essence of a person's identity. I'm sure all of us looked twice as we were leaving the house this morning to make sure we looked okay in the mirror before we left. Head and neck cancer surgeon and one of our founding directors, Bruce Ashford, has said many times, we offer the most complex and involved treatments for head and neck cancer patients, which is all covered by Medicare. Yet we have no reliable or affordable route for facial prosthetics or oral rehabilitation. We have a duty of care for our patients to find a solution to give them quality of life. Earlier this year, there was a Senate inquiry into equitable access to diagnosis and treatment for individuals with rare and less common cancers. One of the key recommendations was for the government to identify the barriers faced by cancer patients requiring rehabilitation and prosthetics as a result of their treatment, with a view to ensuring they have financial support for those services. Senator Wendy Askew, who sat on the inquiry, said having access to dental implants and facial prosthetics, such as an eye, ear, nose or cheek, is a vital step on a patient's journey to recovery, restoring their dignity and reversing the disfiguration that they have endured during their treatment. So our ask today is simple. Ahead of the 2025 federal election, we're calling for a pre-election commitment from the Australian Government to support people with head and neck cancer to access essential survivorship care, be it a facial prosthetic or oral rehabilitation. Just like people, as Matt said, or Craig Tracy alluded to, who have had breast cancer surgery, and they have access to government-funded breast prosthetics for the last 16 years since funding was introduced in 2008. All cancer survivors deserve support, and by supporting this small but profoundly impacted group of patients, the government will also be meeting one of the key objectives of the Australian Cancer Plan, which was launched last year, which is achieving equity in cancer outcomes. I think everyone sitting here would agree what we're asking for today is what any of us would want for ourselves or a loved one if we were faced with the situation of having our mouth or part of our face removed because of cancer. So we really look forward to our continuing discussions with the government to ensure that every person with head and neck cancer has the support to put together all the pieces of their puzzle so that they can feel whole again. So thank you again for being here today, especially thank you to Tracy and Sophie and all the patients and family members here today. It's your lived experience with your head and neck cancer journey that directs our work and inspires us every day. And now I'm hoping that the sound will work. We've got a 5-minute video of Sophie making a prosthetic for Ron. Ron's based on the Central Coast, and he has a prosthetic nose, and he's called it George. And he's had, now I think it's his 3rd prosthetic, so he's up to George the 3rd. And we have a short video where we can see Sophie making this prosthetic, so we might just play that now. Thank you.
My name's Sophie Fleming. I'm an anaplastologist and I've been working in the field of prosthetics for over 20 years, and I provide facial prosthetic rehabilitation for people that have lost parts of their face or have a changed part of their face because of illness such as cancer or trauma or birth. We focus on outside the mouth, so we're working on very aesthetically matched facial prostheses. The prostheses in this area are noses, eyes, we often do ears, fingers, toes, scar divots, and we may include things like eyelashes and eyebrows and all the freckles and irregularities that you might see in the skin. There are a number of different ways that a prosthesis can be held on. They're not permanent attachments, so they are taken on and off every day. And the 3 types are spectacle retained, which is a very old-fashioned method, but it's still being utilised for any number of purposes because it's a person that's not very dexterous or it needs to be taken on and off very quickly. It's a simple and still well-used method. Adhesive retained prostheses is the other very common method, and that's where some medical adhesive is used to actually glue that prosthesis to the skin, which sounds a little bit strange, but is still really functional for people. The other method, which is considered the ideal method, but isn't available for all people because of financial reasons or because their bone quality may not be suitable, is to have bone-anchored implants. So that's when some implants are placed into the bone and the prostheses can just be a snap-on, snap-off type prostheses. It's a really easy way for that person to wear a prosthesis and is used really commonly throughout the world.
So are you ready for your new nose manufacture?
Yeah, looking forward to it actually.
Okay, I'll just take these off and have a look how it's going.
We've seen Ron here today over a period of days to make his prostheses. Throughout that time, he's been in for a number of appointments, which is the normal process for making a prosthesis. We took an impression of his area that requires the prostheses around the nose. It's very gentle and non-invasive. We will fill that with plaster so that I have a plaster version of Ron to work on while he's not here. We will make a prototype of the prostheses out of wax, and that's done in collaboration with Ron, so he was able to tell me whether he was happy with the shape or if it felt like something needed changing. And then once we had confirmed that that was the prototype that he was happy with, I would then make a plaster mould, which is filled with silicone, painted in layers into the prostheses, which has been matched to his skin. When that's been cured and cooked in an oven, we pull it out and we see him for the final consultation, which is to do extrinsic coloration. So that's where we do the final layers of colour to really bring it exactly into his skin tones and add freckles and veins and the other irregularities that we see. That colour's sealed onto the prostheses, and then we have our final consultation, which is to go through the process of gluing on a prosthesis, which is something very new to Ron, and I think he did really well at it, given it was his first time.
Having a prosthetic nose is just like being back to normal. I know when I was first getting there and Sophie said, no one will be able to pick it, and you're still a little bit in the back of your head, well, what's it really going to be like? But it is, yeah, you walk down the street. The only one that people that know are the people that know you had your nose removed.
Sadly, we're really limited with access to facial prosthetic services, and this is mainly because of the lack of funding for these type of services and facilities within Australia. There might be one per state that is available for people to access. So a person that's undergone treatment for head and neck cancer that may require a facial prosthesis, the best thing that they can do to access the services is to get a referral from their surgeon or GP, sent to the prosthetist, and then arrange and liaise with them to create an appointment and do an assessment on what their best prostheses may be.
Feels absolutely great. It's tremendous. I did mention that word normal, but I'm there, so yeah, it's great.